I've had quite the journey. But this is, I now no longer feel like a visitor, right? As I said before, I felt connected, and I'm going to give you a couple of snapshots of what I've experienced. So, when I first came, a colleague at the UWC lives in Franschhoek, and so I spent a little bit of time with her and her family. One of they took me through her neighborhood. We went up a hill and we talked about, I remember them telling me, here is where you'll see a majority of coloreds living. And then as we moved up, they told me, and here's where you'll see more blacks living. And we found ourselves at a pitch where some young boys were playing football, right? And the backdrop is one of the things that I go back to America, and I'm sorry it's going to sound probably very simple, but I say to them, the Lion King has nothing on South Africa. When you see it in real life, it's far better than even the animation, right? But in that, watching that football match, I remember looking at these young boys who were playing with such energy, boundless energy. But there was also a contrast. Down on the pitch, I saw what appeared to me to be raw sewage. And so I had this contrast of being in Franschhoek and having gone to brunch, right, with a colleague who was German, her husband who was white American, right? I remember seeing a house that had a helipad, and all of this is going on in Franschhoek. So that was really very bittersweet for me. On that trip, I was visiting with UWC Sports Science. We went off into different townships and provinces where they had a certificate program, and they would go into these townships and provinces and educate any community folks who wanted to be leaders in sport. They talked to them about recreation. There was really, again, this hope that sport could do something to, they talked about gangsterism, right? It could end this. It might be able to help abate HIV and so on. And that was a very eye-opening thing, to think of going into small townships and to do this education and to offer a certificate, to offer an entryway to education was something that I took back with me. It's something that I see as outstanding. I was also introduced to what we call in the States, in particular cities, an old head. So I was taken to Blickensdorp. And if any of you know, I would assume you know more about it than I do, but I was taken into this small area, again, where a lot of folks have been displaced. There's a whole lot of poverty. There's a lot of danger at night. And this old head, Errol, had taken it upon himself, not a sports person, but he was worried about the youth. And so he said he only had a ball or two, but he would roll this ball out every day just to get the kids something to do. And then he got donations from folks in UWC Sports Science, and then that rolled into not only just him being able to roll out balls, but he had a basketball hoop. He had many different sports represented. And then one of the colleagues at UWC, who actually was a coach, a manager of a privileged white football club, they organized matches. And so Blickensdorp would bring all of their boys to come and play on UWC campus versus this privileged white club, right, football club. And they got the old kits from the privileged white football club, but they shared it across all the ages. So it didn't matter how little or how big they were from Blickensdorp, they were all wearing the same kits, right? But I saw this exchange. I watched UWC rugby, and I got to spend a day with Peter de Villiers, right, who took me to his hometown of Paarl. He showed me around. I was able to speak to young boys there who were playing basketball. He even tried to get me to take a kid back to the States, right? I watched a netball match at Western Cape Sports School. And I also got to lead drills for the boys and girls there who were interested in basketball. So all of this is very reminiscent of my own home country. When I think of the gaps, the differences in wealth and poverty, when I think of the boundless energy that these young people come to sport with, this hope that it can do something, right? Sport is powerful. And whether we're talking about the Western Cape or the United States, it's being used as a way to develop those who are or who have been excluded, right? And that's what really drives us, that this thing is really has, right? And this is the question that was just posed by my previous professor, right? That is sport really doing all that it can, and how has it been effective or ineffective? So I'm a sociologist. I'm an urban sociologist. I study sport, and the way that I really do it is I focus on the importance of place and the development of potential, right? So that place is this fertile ground that is necessary to producing talent. So I think of things and places as like a basketball city. So the city that I spent a lot of time in, where I did my graduate studies, was Philadelphia. And I think of Philadelphia as a basketball city. And for me, the distinction, one of the major distinctions is talent, someone of immense talent, physical, God-given gifts, can come from anywhere. But a basketball city produces talent over and over. It doesn't just have the freak athletes who are amazing. It takes someone who's maybe just above average or right there, just has the requisite ability. And because of what is there in that place, right, that city, that township, the resources of the people, because of that, they're able to produce talent over and over. So in a place like Philadelphia, that is considered a black city, and when we say that about a major city in the States, what we often mean is that there's an inner city, right? That there's poor black folks there. Those are the folks who stay in the inner city. They haven't been able to escape with industrialization and jobs and so on. And yet, this is so right, and people and coaches in particular recruit and have recruited black athletes from the inner city in the States since the 1960s. There was a huge shift from blacks only going to historically black colleges and universities to then being recruited to white colleges and universities. And what they were known for, not only was it about their style of play, but it was their heart, right? And what it is that there was an advantage to being from the inner city, and that advantage was based on their disadvantage, right? It was their disadvantage that enabled them to, when they had the right mindset, to be hopeful. And we've been talking about hope already this morning. And it's this hope that can grow from wanting and needing more, right? And that's what gives them that persistence. That's what gives them that heart, as we say. And so going back to the song, they want to fly away. They want to escape where it is that the poverty that they've come from. Not the people, not even necessarily the neighborhood, but they want to escape that condition. And sport, therefore, is their wings. Sport is how they're going to do it. So sport is an outlet for hope. And what we get is the action part. In becoming an athlete, they take on an athletic identity, right? So they use this identity to actually take hope and do something. They're not just hopeful. They have to have this athletic identity. And what that athletic identity does is it allows them to take on new priorities. They're not as short-term in their thinking. They plan. They're strategic, right? They have to become more disciplined. It allows them to drive themselves to have a desire and really to take the risk to achieve the impossible. It helps them to resist settling, complacency, and doing the easy things, just going along with the crowd. And so, again, this advantage and disadvantage is about this organic power, right? The power of the struggle to get out of poverty, that's their individual situation. The struggle for group mobility, that's making it better for one's family and close friends. And for some, it also includes this struggle for equality and social change, making it better for their people and for the world. When you look at what it is our communities do, right? So what I'm saying, again, this power of the place, we have great recognition, support for athletes. They are our heroes. They're our role models. Quick tangent. In Philadelphia, I'm walking the street, and for a basketball player, I'm not tall, but I know in general people think that I'm tall. And an older black woman asked me, "Are you a basketball player?" And I told her, "No, I'm working towards my PhD," thinking that this would impress her. And she said, "What a waste." Right? This is Philadelphia. This is a basketball city. What a waste. You're supposed to be playing ball, right? There's recognition from people when you're a basketball player. My old head, the man that I coached with, died at 82, and he still called himself a basketball player. He will forever be a basketball player. The world and the networks he had, his guys were all basketball guys. Right? So this is something different. You get rewarded for it. There's status that comes with that. And so athletes from inner cities and poverty often represent, as we say, which means that they compete for more than themselves. Right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this representing. I'm going to try to keep to my time, but I know we're a little ahead of time. Right? I'm going to take a international leniency or leeway. So I may just look like a regular American, right? But in fact, I'm transnational. So sometimes when people ask where are you from, it's easy for me to say Oakland, California, right? My Golden State Warriors have been great lately, although it's not going to look good the next couple of years. But you know, Oakland is a source of pride. But I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. My father from South Central LA, from home of NWA and Snoop Dogg, well, relatively close to Snoop Dogg, but from Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. He had these wild dreams of working overseas since he was in high school. Studied French and just kept pushing. So he worked for TWA Airlines, and then when when Saudi Arabia got their money in oil back in the 60s, they went around the world to different airlines and asked for employees to come. And my dad jumped that ship and said, "Let's go." And so I spent time between the states, and particularly Oakland, California, and Saudi Arabia, right? And the last stint that I did was from 4th grade through 8th grade. So I'm in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, which is a port city, right? But there's great differences in those experiences. Coming from Oakland, and Oakland is known as a pretty rough place, again, another black city, I was accustomed to fighting. But my dad said to me, you can't fight every day, right? You got to learn how to figure out when you have to fight and when you don't. He still prepared us. He took us to what we have as the Boys and Girls Club, and my brothers and I all learned to box. I'm the youngest of 3, although I am the tallest now, but I'm the youngest of 3. And so, you know, I had to take the shots from my older brothers and then go to the boxing club and fight there. We fought at grammar school. I mean, we had fake gangs. We did all that kind of stuff. My dad would take us down to the flats. I was more of a middle-class family, working middle-class family, but I did athletics, I did track and field, and we ran on a track that was dirt, a little bit of gravel, and then glass from liquor bottles. And so that was a real motivation not to come behind, right? You didn't want that dirt and that gravel and that glass to hit you in the face. So you ran as fast as you could. So I got pretty good at that, right? So I had that experience. And I was in a school that moved from being about 20% black, this is my grammar school, to being about 90% black, all in the span of 4 years. And this is, you know, in the States we call this gentrification. I'm not sure if that's what you all call it here, but these are the kinds of things that happen. So I moved from there, and I landed in Saudi Arabia in the mid-'80s. And instead of having to deal with that, what I get is being called darky and blackie, sorry, and then nigger. Right? I grew up in Oakland, nigga, I heard all the time. You know, and you can use it in a lot of different contexts. Right? That's my nigga, that's a good thing. Right? You could use it as an insult. There's a lot of different ways you can use it. My father was a Richard Pryor fan. He let us listen to Richard Pryor on headphones. My mother wouldn't allow us to listen. And so I knew that term from Richard Pryor. But I had never been called that, nigger, until I go all the way to Saudi Arabia. I'm at an American compound. I'm at an American school with mostly Midwestern whites and Southern whites from Missouri, right, and other places down in the South. And I remember one game in particular, playing basketball with my brother who's just 10 months ahead of me. And the game was kind of stacked against us. We're in the championship. But the team we were playing, their coaches were our school principal and vice principal. So the top two people in the school. They started and ran the league. Whenever they picked teams, and we played in a co-ed league, they had the best girls and the least number of girls, right? And you had to play everyone. But they had all the advantages. Our team was more of the team of misfits, I'll call it. We were the most diverse. I was playing with my brother, and you know, sibling issues can come on to a team situation. So my brother and I didn't really get along, so you had some of those issues. I remember our Shia Khan and her brother Ahmed Khan, he would tell her she sucked whenever she made a mistake, and then she'd slap him, and we'd have to break them up for fights. I remember another teammate, Charlene, who had never ever touched the basketball. She was more worried about her nails and looking right whenever we were playing the other team. She always wanted to make sure she had a boyfriend, right? So that was her thing. But my older brother, in one of our rare moments of unification, when we're down at halftime and it doesn't look good, he pulls me aside and he says, "We're from Oakland. You better play like it. Don't let these white boys beat us." Now, I had already, again, run in athletics. I had played football. But sport didn't have the meaning that he made it have for me until then, right? Up until that point, I'd always thought about sport as my own little career. But when he said, "We're from Oakland," when he said, "Play like it," and then he said, "Don't let these white boys beat us," he was linking me to something bigger than myself, right? It meant that I was not just representing Scott, I was representing all blacks. I was representing Oakland. I was representing all those who didn't have, you know, the cards stacked in their favor. And so at that point and building on, sport became more of an expression of myself, my culture, my American blackness, and also my African blackness, because I knew that all of that went together. And so after that, I wanted to beat everyone. Everyone that I came across, I wanted to beat. And particularly when I was outside of Oakland, right? When I was back in Oakland, you know, it's kind of a tough thing. But when I was outside of Oakland, this was something that I was able to pull from, this pride of representing. And so, what does representing mean? So when I'm thinking of what I've seen here in South Africa with youth, I see Team SA. And you know, I love it. I follow Mati Sport on Instagram, and of course, Ilham and Sean are always pumping, "Hey, Mati Sport and Team SA." And we want to be unified under our national flag and our colors. Right? There's something to that. But there's also something to representing where you're from. And I think that we have to think about that critically. My old head would say, you don't want to take the fight out of the dog. If we forget where we're from and what we're representing, right? We may lose some of that diversity and really that motivation that we come in here with. There's intrinsic value. There's things that we get from where we're from. Sometimes we just say they're from the flats or they're from there, and it's a put down, as though it's deficient. There's pathology there. But I'm telling you, that's not all that comes out of that, right? The roads and the concrete. There's genius there, obviously. There's heart. There's commitment. There's this hope and this desire to fly away. And so I saw it in these kids that I've seen at the Western Cape. I saw it at the Western Cape Sports School. These kids that I was leading in basketball drills that were willing to dive on the concrete to try to make an impression. I saw it with the kids that were on the pitch in Franchot, that were playing in a setting that for them was just like playing in the Allianz Stadium, right? Playing in Barcelona, playing in England. This meant something to them. And so all at the same time, right, we need this transformation, but we can't allow it to water us down. We need to embrace that diversity at the same time that we are trying to move us towards this integration. And so I just wanted to give you all those reflections on what I see, because our country's really, and there's a classic book that by one of my professors called American Apartheid, but those in sociology who study race see us as both having an apartheid history, right? And that's something, if you're not aware of it, go and look up what Jim Crow America is. Not only slavery, right? That's like the obvious. Go look at Jim Crow America. Think back to what you're seeing in America in terms of the protest over police brutality, right? We have this shared history. So I think that we have a lot to learn from each other. It's been an honor and a pleasure to become a part of Mati Sport and to be affiliated with Stellenbosch. I love coming here and seeing my fellow coaches and being able to speak with them. And I look forward to many and more visits. Thank you.